thinking about interactive media, about video games, about virtual worlds, about 3D. That was the kind of thing we thought was something that wasn't being addressed at the moment. And there were a number of reasons we saw in favour of that. First, there were games as a cultural and archival object. Games form a significant part of that cultural industry that we were talking about. And they're not being archived or preserved at the moment. So there's issues around how that whole bit of our current culture is preserved. Potentially, all these different approaches, not only games, but also the virtual worlds and 3D, have enormous pedagogical use at all sorts of levels. We see them as potentially being enormously important in making e-learning far more exciting. Particularly, we were interested in the way in which there could be a link with providing access to the collections in galleries, archives and museums, and the way in which that worked. And we were interested also in the way they hook into sort of 3D printing, design of the environment, and general sort of time-space behaviour. So I thought there was a whole area that was very rich for investigation there. So anything I've missed out on any of that? Yeah, is that all right? So the second priority we called Unlocking the Archive, Creative Use of Sound, Video and Multimedia Data. And we thought that this is really kind of addressing the problem of the gridlock that one's got in making use and reusing any kind of video or sound material. If we think IP and rights are complex in a textual environment, it's a nightmare when you get into any sort of video environment. If we get to a point where somehow we could help unlock that, we felt it could be culturally really transformational. It could drive forward policy changes because it would help us get to grips with complex rights issues. It may be something you couldn't necessarily do all in one go. It might need to be incremental, or we might need to take it forward step by step to deal with the larger issues. Partly because there are powerful commercial interests involved. We were interested in the way in which things like British Council films have been opened up by the use of Crown copyright, and we wonder whether a more systematic approach to that might help open it up. And we felt that, like 3D, if we could actually solve the rights problems there, it might unlock cultural changes elsewhere. So those were the two priorities. In terms of the relationships to the other things, it's probably worth mentioning we did have a long conversation about the importance of tools and shared tools, and also, very critically, about the need to prepare data and to provide access. When we get to video data, the quantities can be so huge and the technical complexities in preparing it can be so great that it's possibly beyond the scope of one university to deal with it, and we perhaps aren't doing enough in those areas. So those were the two we didn't actually decide to bid for, but that gives us some idea of our conversation.